Hey all, so this is War 5 against Salty. Um, Very strong alliance, regularly places on the podium. As you can see from this first one, they have come in first. We got to be careful with this one. I am taking 9 fights, so I think that is one short of the maximum these days. I'm just not taking the boss, basically. A lot going on here. Anyway, we start with this Hulk here, who I don't know why I was having trouble getting the riposte off against him. It was just something about his basics was really throwing me. I don't really have a good answer for that. But once we get things going, I do go ahead and use it to throw the heavy. I don't just go straight for my special one, because just in case we hit him a little bit harder than I was expecting, I wanted to slow up soon, right? Then the special one reapplies it. Then we use the riposte to get the stun again. We heavy, knock him down, refresh the cold snap, immediately follow it up with another, capitalizing on the crush. And at this point, this fight is functionally over. We go ahead and throw the striker. Again, the slow really helps us there. We don't have to worry about his unstoppable, and we are good to go. Kate is just like literally the perfect counter for that fight. And we move on to Rintrah here. A lot of ascended characters, as you can see. Salty does go all out. It's hard to imagine a better counter for this than Photon, right? Like, the weaknesses are going to stack up a bit, but that doesn't really matter because Rintrah has very long specials. I'm going to have time to let them fall off. And I have a tactic attacker who ramps at double or triple speed because every single time I make contact, I apply a debuff. And I'm immune to neutralize. So there is just like nothing in this fight that could possibly scare us. We do go ahead and throw our heavy there because that's going to apply the sunder that we need to actually crit against Rintrah because he is rather tanky. We reapply it there after the striker. Like I said, we have plenty of time during the specials to let weaknesses fall off. And at this point, we're just spamming special ones. I stopped myself just short of making the cows come home joke, but for those of you who would have enjoyed it, there it is anyway. But yeah, this is just perfect. Long specials, weaknesses fall off, get your pause, go aggro, push him over the next bar of power. She is ideal. The only thing you have to watch for is, of course, the insult to injury node, and so while you have seen me parry and punish a few times here, I am being careful and watching for the parry to actually stick, because our defensive ability accuracy is being lowered. And there we go. Finish it off with the striker. Only 2 charges going into the next fight, but that's okay. Like, Photon, especially with this tactic, is very good at ramping from 0. I'm not really focused on trying to manage her charges going into the next fight, basically ever. Like, it's a cool bonus if that happens. It's a nice little bit of her abilities, but that is one way in which she is quite different from OG Captain Marvel, or Captain Marvel movie, I guess maybe you shouldn't call that OG, in that, like, the persistent part is just not as important for her. It's much more of a bonus. Quicksilver against Claire here, we just assume permanently unblockable. Basically, the only character that can really answer Claire here without permanently sending her unblockable is Sandman, spamming special ones and avoiding her special 2, right? Because that would be the 3rd debuff. Everyone else sends her permanently unblockable, but it doesn't really matter if you're using a tactic champion and you're comfortable, right? Claire does, of course, recover very quickly from all 3 of her openings, her heavy, her special 1, and her special 2. It is easy to get parried against her, right? That is something that we are going to be watchful of. But at the same time, that's why Quicksilver is so good for this. Because if I get parried, well, I'm going to have that safety net of my evade. Kate is probably my second favorite for the same reason. Doesn't control Claire's power quite as well, does trigger some light mystic dispersion. But as long as you're comfortable playing around her like this, you don't really need anything fancy. Moving on to the second fight. I believe it's spam, right? Yeah, we're going back to Kate here because she's a skill champion. She has Cold Snap to turn off Evade. She's just going to rinse this. Now, Painful Retreat is something that we are going to try and play around a little bit. We are going to try and make sure that when that timer comes around, we are below 10, but kind of close to it. So similar with Void, we can cross a multiple of 10, get rid of the power snack, and immediately go about our business. We also do want to watch for the fact that when we use the riposte and strike spam while stunned, he can apply power stings to us, right? That is something to be watchful for, but that's kind of the main risk of this fight. We are otherwise playing around the power stings. You saw just there, we managed to time it out so that the power sting applied while we were at 19. We immediately got rid of it. We've been countering the special one with heavies to keep him in the corner, to keep him throwing specials, to keep our stuff refreshed. And as you can see, that was a no damage taken fight. That is how it goes. Moving on to Chavez here. This is the same Chavez that I died to a couple wars ago with Quicksilver. And so I do throw on an invuln boost here. Quicksilver can take it, especially with the invuln boost. If I had been forced to do that again, I would have. I've seen other people do it. I'm not worried about the counter. But at the same time, if I have another tactic attacker here who can still apply withers, who can still control her dimensions, but can also throw down a giant passive cold snap that the node won't get rid of, well then that's what I'm going to do. And see, there we go. Even through her... I guess she doesn't have energy resistance if we don't have buffs and she doesn't have dimension, so I take that back. But through her lack of energy resistance, Ascended Kate Bishop is doing all of this damage with her Cold Snap. We use the Striker so that we can knock her down in the corner, remove the protection. Oh, I actually canceled out of the Striker into my Special 1. I remember this. That was a completely unnecessary error. If I had just completed my Heavy, knocked her down, used the Crush, and then thrown the Special 1 I had, we would have finished that probably 10-15 seconds faster. But either way, Kate just makes very quick work of that. Basically, any tactic defender that goes there and dies to Cold Snap is pretty easy pickings for her this season. Moving on to Maw, you've seen this before. Photon definitely can do this, but I have done it with Quicksilver a few times thus far, and I'm just that much more comfortable with it. On this fight in particular, I expect to push him to the Special 2, and having that comfort with animations is kind of important because I just expect going into this fight, pretty much no matter who I'm facing, I'm betting I'm going to get rooted at some point, right? And that's not the end of the world. If I get rooted, then I'm just going to be dodging heavies. Almost nobody places somebody here specifically for a heavy that's hard to dodge while rooted. They're just not dangerous enough, right? Maybe sometime in the future. There you see we perfectly timed the Special 2 so that we were at 9 charges on Bubble Shield so we could block one of the needle hits and dex out of the second one. That is my preferred way to deal with that. We throw our Special 3. We could have thrown the Special 2 and cashed out. It doesn't really matter. I decided I wanted to be in terminal velocity, and so we're just going to keep ramping. You can see we're at 17. Oh, no, wait. Yeah, I don't really know what I did there. There's no good reason to do what I did, to cash out and throw the Special 3. I don't know what I did there. Whatever. We're in control. We basically, I assumed that if I diffuse Bubble Shield the first time, I'm probably good, and that is what you're seeing here. Now, one thing I have to be very careful with is that terminal velocity is about to fall off, and therefore I'm going to lose my my miscounter. Now, if I had thrown the Special 1 there, we would have gotten it back while we still had the boost from the Heavy. So I probably should have done that instead of focused on the Special 2, but it is what it is, and you can see here I take getting rooted again willfully rather than going for the immediate cash out with the special 2, because I want to get the miss counter up so that I can just go for it and end the fight without worrying about that. Now, for my troubles, for taking longer in the fight this time, not really having a super clean game plan, I do take quite a bit more block damage via Bubble Shield. So if you are looking for a fight to emulate and taking this yourself, don't copy that one. Copy one of the ones from earlier this season, but that also shows you just how safe Quicksilver is there. Moving on to Doom again here on Hazard Shift, Shock Bleed. I took this same fight last war, and you saw just how good that is with her getting around the Doom Slap. But you are also seeing right here how I'm being very careful while my Untouchable is still on cooldown. And we don't want to get too close to him before it comes back, right? Because while that's on cooldown, he can actually stun me and hit me. And we've all faced Doom before where he's done that. Even through his abysmal crit rate, it somehow is a crit. And suddenly the fight is risky where it wasn't before. So that's what we are trying to avoid. You saw right there, I threw the special 2, even though he had his aura active. I knew he was going to resist it, but I also knew I was going to go untouchable. I actually had not processed that I had a shock on me, so then he immediately threw the heavy. It stunned us, and we went untouchable for even longer. We were still safe there, right? So, funny how that worked. Was able to go for the heavy immediately, knock him down, get the slow up, get the sunder up, and go back into our rotation here. You're seeing as we go through this that I am often pushing to the special 2. You can just aggressively bait out the special 1 as long as you are knocking him down and keeping the slow up. That works perfectly well. I don't mind going to the special 2 because Photon has such good block proficiency at Sig 200 that dexing out of it after the first hit usually feels pretty safe. We heal up Quicksilver. We take Mangog again here, the Eternal Placement. I believe this one goes better than the last war, because the last war was the one where I had to go into terminal velocity. This one is a bit cleaner, but, you know, it's the same story. We get our withers up from the tactic, but we also try and make sure that we are dexing a fair amount to try and really slow down his power gain, especially in the early stages here, while he still hasn't crossed too many bars of power, and the combat power gain is not yet boosted by Aspect of Evolution. We make sure that we are refreshing our whiplashes. We don't necessarily want to shut him down completely, because, you know, this is Quicksilver. He benefits when the opponents throw their special. You get that nice juicy pause. But we do just want to keep a few extra withers going so that we have more time to ramp things up and do damage before there's much threat from him. We go for another bar of ramp here. He parries, and this time we go for our cash out. 23 Whiplash does a good chunk of damage. He's now down below 50. And now we go back into our holding pattern, right? Because he's at 9 charges. We know he's close to going berserk. We're going to have to wait that out. We don't want the special 2 to happen while that's up. But that is the main threat remaining in the fight. Note the slow does not prevent the unstoppable because Aspect of Evolution has given him extra ability accuracy. That much is expected. We go for the cash out after the striker, and he parries it anyway, the giant jerk. I remember thinking that I threw it quickly enough, but clearly I was just a little bit slow. Not super fun, kind of wastes the striker physical invulnerability, but, you know, he is back down to 0 charges. We're dexing a bunch for our withers, making sure things don't get away from us. We know we're going to be able to close this out all the same. 11 withers is a good sign in this fight. We're just going back up to a special 2. Doesn't really matter how much whiplash we have. We know he's low enough that it's going to finish it. Come on, buddy. There we go. Parry, medium, light, medium, special 2. This one lands, and pop, there he goes. So not my cleanest, but significantly better than the previous war, back into comfortable territory, and we move on to Carl here. Yet another ascended rank 5 absorbing man on Conflictor. Good placement, a little bit problematic for the torches, that a lot of people still have it rank 3. A lot of people need to bring House of X to bring torch here. Tough for a lot of other characters, but as I said in my last video, Photon was literally built for Mystics on the Conflictor node. That was one of her defining goals as a character, and so she is quite good for this. Now, Carl being more defensive in general does make her a little bit worse, because he spends more time not getting fresh debuffs and therefore not having that petrify up, reversing his healing. So this fight goes a little bit slower than the previous war, but you can still see how clean it is. You also see how quickly his morph charges ramp, right? So this is a fight where, like, you do have to play well. You see that one hit that I took there was actually kind of a risk, because if that had crit, like, we'd be fine this season, right? Because we have the tactic reducing all red damage. That's what damage over time effects means at the moment in our game. But the crit could still hurt, especially with the prowess puncture node on his side. So that's still something to be careful of. But the lower we get him, the more the healing reversal hurts, because the stronger his healing is, because he has more missing health. And so once this fight starts accelerating a bit more, Photon just closes it out very simply. So yeah, very fun war for me. We did lose this one, and on a tie, so that's a bit frustrating. Not really going to spend much more time on that. Talking to the troops to try and clean it up for the rest of the season. This is probably going to be my last war video for a couple weeks. I'm just not sure I'm going to have time to record any more. Maybe one more, and I can schedule it to come out later. But I will be catching up when I get back. Until then, thank you so much for watching, and take care.